I have already performed some extreme citrus grafting in a previous video. In today's video, I will first provide an update on the results from this first experiment before presenting an even more extreme experiment. If you are only interested in the second experiment, don't hesitate to jump ahead in the video timeline. The goal I want to achieve is to find the cheapest and fastest way to obtain a grafted citrus tree capable of producing fruits while I wait for my 16-year-old citrus tree grown from seed to bloom for the first time and eventually bear fruit. As you probably know, citrus trees grown from seeds can take decades to bear fruit, while grafted citrus trees only take a few years, but they also usually come with a high price tag. In the first experiment, I used a standard pocket knife, a grafting tape, and small rubber bands. For the rootstock, I used a 2-year-old citrus sapling I grew from seed. As for the scions, I used clementines with leaves sold in grocery stores. The preferred time for citrus grafting is late winter or early spring. But since citrus fruits with leaves are mostly available during various Asian festivities, the only option for me was late fall or early winter. In late January, I was able to get some pretty fresh imported fruits, which came with healthy green leaves and stems. All in all, after a careful assessment, I found 3 stems that were thick and long enough for me to attempt grafting with them on the smaller branches of the same rootstock. I used 2 techniques: cleft grafting and simple whip grafting. My preferred grafting technique is the whip and tongue technique, like here on an apple scion and rootstock, but the stems attached to the clementine fruits are very thin, which renders the whip and tongue technique virtually impossible to perform. I wouldn't say cleft grafting and simple whip grafting are easy to perform with such thin stems, but at least I felt more confident with these 2 techniques. After about a month, in late February, it seemed to me that 2 of the grafts had turned brownish, which suggested they had failed, but I was still hopeful and kept the grafting tape on. As spring was approaching, the citrus rootstock was already starting to push out new growth below the graft unions. To make sure the nutrients were directed to the grafts, I removed all the new growth. About mid-March, I thought it was time to check if the grafts were successful by partially removing the grafting tape. As anticipated, 2 of the grafts had indeed failed. The 3rd graft was clearly still green, so I decided to keep the last layer of grafting tape on for another month or so. One of the many reasons why a graft can fail is dehydration of the scion. This is especially true when the graft was done during the cold season, in dry indoor conditions. However, the drawback with keeping the grafting tape for this long is that the buds may not be able to break through the tape. With thicker scions, the grafting tape can be carefully wrapped around the buds, exposing the buds to the air. But I was working with very thin scions, and I did not want to take any chances, so I did not remove the tape. In early spring, I was able to get another batch of clementines with leaves. Given my poor 33% success rate up to that point, I decided to perform a 4th graft on the same rootstock. In early June, I partially removed the grafting tape on the 2 grafts. This graft is from the late January batch. There were a few green buds on the scion. This graft is from the late March batch with a 100% success rate. Up to that point, my success rate had then improved from 33% to 50%. The 2 grafts developed nicely over the course of the summer. In early July, I removed the first layer of grafting tape along with the rubber band on the graft from the 2nd batch. Notice how the graft from the 2nd batch was as developed as the graft from the 1st batch, which tends to confirm that spring is a better time to graft citrus trees. 4 weeks later, in late July, with the leaves almost fully developed, I removed the remaining grafting tape protecting the graft unions. This is the graft from the 1st batch with the cleft grafting technique, and this is the graft from the 2nd batch with the simple whip technique. I then felt ready to move on to the next level. But before I do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate notifications if you would like to get updates on these two grafts. The second grafting experiment I'm about to present really happened by chance. Subscribers to this channel probably know that some time ago I germinated guava seeds with plasma indoors in wintertime with close to a 100% success rate. Actually, I believe all the seeds germinated. As discussed in a previous video on crop circles, the guava seedlings showed surprising vigor indoors in wintertime under low light conditions. They also showed resilience to heat and drought in the greenhouse in summertime. I will put a link to that video on the end screen. What I did not mention was that there was a citrus seed among the guava seeds. I am not sure whether it came from a lemon or a grapefruit, and I really do not remember how it ended up with the guava seeds. I guess I just did not want to throw it away that day and put it with the guava seeds I was about to treat with my ESG plasma generator. I had completely forgotten about the citrus seed until early May, when I saw a different seedling in one of the pots with the guava seedlings. When I transplanted the guava seedlings, I also transplanted the citrus seedling. Here it is with its guava seedling friends from the same pot. I put them with the pepper seedlings. And here it is in late July and late August. It seems to me that it was growing almost as fast as the guava seedlings in the same extreme greenhouse conditions. A few months later, in mid-October the same year, I was able to get another batch of clementines with leaves. They were not as fresh as the ones from the previous batches, but I wanted to see whether I could improve my 50% graft success rate. After sorting the stems, I selected the biggest ones and grafted them on my citrus trees, including the one discussed earlier in this video. After grafting the best stems, I was left with two stems that were very thin. I was about to throw the last two stems away when I noticed their thickness kind of matched the thickness of the citrus seedling I germinated with plasma. The seedling was about a foot tall after germinating sometime in April with the guava seedlings, about 7 months prior. Given that it intermittently went through hot and dry conditions in the greenhouse over the summer, I was somewhat surprised by its vigor in mid-October. So I thought, why not? It was going to be the most extreme grafting I had ever performed. I chose the best of the two remaining stems based on thickness. Usually with thin stems like this one, I prefer the cleft grafting technique, but splitting the citrus seedling in half seemed too risky. I only had one try, so I opted for the simple whip technique. Making a nice cut in one shot is not easy, but I tried to make the cut as flat as possible to maximize the contact area between the scion and the rootstock. I cut the rootstock below the first node to make sure the nutrients would not be diverted away from the scion. Next, again I tried to make a flat cut without damaging the fragile seedling rootstock. The cut was a bit too long, so I shortened it just a little bit to match the length of the cut on the scion. Wrapping the tape around such a thin graft union can be challenging. I felt very clumsy. But perseverance is the mother of success. The key is to wrap as tightly as possible without breakage. I used extra tape to better secure the graft union. I usually wrap the whole scion with grafting tape, but this time I used another method. More on that later. Depending on the grafting technique, further strengthening the graft union with a rubber band could be optional. With a simple whip technique and a thin graft union, I think this step greatly increases the odds of success. Oh, and did I say I felt very clumsy? I hope you are not getting too anxious and frustrated just watching this video. Finally, I loosely wrapped the scion inside a piece of translucent grocery plastic bag. This will allow more room for the young buds to grow. As previously mentioned, in my experience, young citrus buds have a hard time breaking through the grafting tape. The buds eventually die out if they do not have room to grow. By the way, I used cheap grafting tape, so your experience may differ if you use better quality tape. 1 week later, in late October, I checked all the grafts I made earlier in the month on my citrus trees. Many of the grafts had already turned brownish. This one is from the rootstock discussed earlier in the video, where my success rate was at 50%. After removing the tape, it was clear the scion was dead. It was still sticking to the branch, but with a little nudge it easily detached. With this failure, my success rate on this rootstock dropped from 50% to 40%. The success rate did not drop further as, fortunately, the two graft unions from the previous year still looked healthy, just like the scions and their young leaves. This is the cleft graft. And this is the simple whip graft. I was not very hopeful when I went on to check the graft with the citrus seedling. The scion on it came from the same October batch, which was not very fresh to start with and had multiple failures on more mature rootstocks. And I used the least promising scion of the batch to graft on the seedling, which was only 7 months old. I also performed the graft at possibly the worst time of the year, in fall. Talking about fall, autumn this year was probably one of the worst in many years, even by Canadian standards. This is what the garden looked like in October after a nasty snowstorm. I could not believe my eyes when I saw what appeared to be a bright green spot under the translucent plastic. Gardening is like alchemy, turning lead into gold. Did it work? I needed to know. While I was cutting the plastic protection, I could feel the transmutation. I wonder if any of my viewers will understand. Is anyone interested in alchemy? I mean, not the live album from Dire Straits. Drop me a comment if you would like me to cover this topic. Cool therapy style, of course. There was no longer any shadow of a doubt. It did work. In less than a month, the stem from the store-bought imported clementine was already pushing new growth. If green gold existed, it would surely look like this. Was this vigor due to the fact that the rootstock was a seedling? Did the fact that I germinated the citrus seed with plasma have anything to do with this beyond expectation success? The scientific mind will probably classify this result as anecdotal, given that there is no control group and the sample is a singleton. Fair enough. For the time being, my only concern is to keep this grafted seedling alive. It was not out of the woods yet. Since it seemed to grow quite fast, wrapping it back with the plastic film to avoid dehydration was not practical. I opted for a larger rigid transparent plastic cover, essentially the bottom part of a plastic bottle, which 1 week later was already too small. So I switched to a larger cup. 1 week later, at the end of November, the larger cup was again already too small. So I came up with this new protection. I wonder how long it will take this grafted plasma seedling to bear juicy clementines. Hopefully less than 2 decades. Bye for now. Thank you for watching.